MS Now's Jake Traylor's still with us, and joining the conversation is former Republican Congressman Denver Riggleman of Virginia, who served as an advisor for the House January 6th Select Committee. Jake, are you able to even get a firm answer from the White House on the status of this fund?
To be short, no, because the president wants something different than his top White House aides want. There have been multiple conversations I've had with folks behind the scenes, and they say they know this anti-weaponization fund is not good politically, does not make sense for the president amidst the ongoing war, inflation, affordability crisis, but it is something that the president wants. And I think that interview was really telling, because the president essentially made his largest full-throated argument for it yet, saying if it was up to him, we would see this anti-weaponization fund, despite Todd Blanche essentially saying it's not going forward anymore, the DOJ trying to put pause on it. This often happens in a Trump administration whenever he wants something, but his team knows it's politically not advantageous for the president to move forward with. And so in this moment, it kind of hangs in this confusing limbo. But the president's words there are really worth noting, because he says if it were up to him, it would be something that would go forward. That's incredibly notable, given the fact that Todd Blanche, the acting AG, has been doing so much to appease President Trump in this time before he actually faces the Senate for that confirmation hearing.
Jake Traylor, thanks for bringing us the latest. So many mixed messages, Congressman. In fact, even on Friday, the DOJ laid out an argument in a court filing for the judge basically to let this case slide because it was moot at this point, according to the DOJ, saying this fund wasn't going forward. So let me lay out exactly what we are hearing from this administration, President Trump and then Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. Here's what they're saying about this fund.
So I love it. I think it's so important.
We are not moving forward with the fund, period.
The weaponization fund, as far as I'm concerned, was a beautiful thing.
We're not moving forward with the fund.
Now, I don't know what's going to happen with the weaponization fund. I love the idea.
There's nothing to reverse. We're not moving forward with the fund.
Who do you believe? If you were still in Congress, would you be pushing new legislation to ban this fund or even an investigation into what's going on?
Oh, absolutely, I would. I mean, if you think about the exact number on it, right, it's $1.776 billion. You know, 1776 was the QAnon slogan for the stolen election in 2020. And what you're looking at, this is the same message. I believe it was September of 2020 when he told the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers to stand back and stand by. I think it was a question by Matthews from Fox News. I think it was September 29th of 2020. This is just an amplified message to supporters of stolen election conspiracies that QAnon is still alive and well. The $1.776 billion was that number. And when you're looking at the inconsistency from the administration, when it comes to conspiracies, when it comes to the way this administration acts, inconsistency is a feature, not a bug of this administration. And I think, Anna, that's what I want people to know, is that when you're looking at radicalizing language, when you're looking at the violence that happened in the 2020 and 2021 elections of January 6th, what you're looking at is a repeat, except it's internal now. They have control of every piece of what could happen based on legal justifications or even made up investigations into foreign election interference. And that's why this scares me so much.
The president didn't even rule out payments to violent January 6th insurrectionists when he was pushed on it by Kristen Welker. Does this make it hard for Republicans to say that they are the party of law and order that backs the blue?
Well, I don't think lying is really a big deal to them. You know, they've been saying they back the blue based on whatever fantasy that they're living after January 6th. You know, I know one of the emergency room nurses that was there that day on January 6th at the hospital who treated Brian Sicknick. And, you know, I think people forget about the violence of that day, how many law enforcement officers were hurt. And again, it goes back to specifically that you can't back the blue if you back President Trump. I mean, the hypocrisy, you know, you don't want to use the word evil of it, but it's almost as if they're heading into the sand so far that it's, you know, completely reversed into their rear parts. I'm just not quite sure, you know, how they can say they back the blue, even with the comments that you saw by President Trump with Kristen Welker.
And it's not just January 6th pardons or the fact that this fund would reward violent insurrectionists. It's the firings of FBI agents. It's the DOJ apparently prioritizing prosecutions based on politics. Does law enforcement feel like this administration has their backs?
It's based on your belief system, right? If you believe conspiracy theories, you believe that there's some kind of deep state or globalist takeover, you still believe in the 1776 message of QAnon and conspiracy theories, you might think that way. But I think real professionals understand when you have a purge in the FBI and in the intel agencies, this is taking away any practical way of balancing conspiracy theories, lies, and fabrications, and even the social media amplification you're going to see on X. And I think that, again, I want to warn people. I feel like Cassandra sometimes, the Trojan horse that you're seeing when you see Tulsi Gabbard, what she did in Georgia, what she did, right, as far as seizing machines in Puerto Rico, you see that downstream thing where you have DNI involved in foreign election conspiracy theories. Now you have Bill Pulte coming in. Yeah. The Trojan horse is even bigger, right, when you're talking about that. And, I started warning of this like really loudly about 27 days before January 6th. And now I'm trying to warn people now that what you're seeing is institutional capture. You're seeing people within the administration being able to manipulate data and push that to platforms that are favorable to that disinformation. I think that is one of the biggest dangers I've seen, not only in 2026, but going into 2028.
The president has made clear that he wants Bill Pulte to make big time cuts in the Office of National Intelligence. And he expects Pulte to look into quote unquote rigged elections, him publicly vocalizing that. The top Democrat on the Senate Intel Committee is waving these, big warning flags saying that Pulte himself is a national security risk. What could this one man actually do in this role, and what could stop him?
He could brutalize the American experiment of institutional trust. I'm an intelligence professional. Intelligence is about telling the truth based on facts and data. Bill Pulte's whole career is telling people what they want to hear. And when you see something like Bill Pulte, who is literally a Nepo baby, who is a Twitter influencer that tried to push crypto, and somebody that wants to do whatever Trump wants to do, when I talk about institutional capture on, I'm talking about that's literally what a 38-year-old guy with no experience is going to do. And think about what they're doing. A 210-day temporary appointment is an end run around the Senate. Now, the Senate is legally mandated to pick somebody with national intelligence expertise. Pulte has none. And those 210 days run through the midterms. I am warning people right now that there's going to be more investigations into foreign interference that are fabricated, that are lies. You're talking about them balancing off the executive orders of March 2025 and March 2026. And you're going to see more draft executive orders that talk about more of a federal capture of the institution of our elections in every state. And I think it's time for the states really to say, hey, the 10th Amendment is out there. Again, I think this institutional capture of all these internal apparatuses within the government, Bill Pulte being a shining example of extremist sycophancy, right, and somebody who's completely unqualified and they're just there to do what Trump does, means we're going to get more and more disinformation and more amplification. And I think platforms like X will be some of the largest disinformation amplifiers we've seen in our lifetimes.